Welcome back to my 5-year project where I sort of talk about my life in 5-year installments, and this is where sort of everything falls down because between 15 and 20, so much happens that I'm gonna just ignore that for a second. I figure that there's going to be swaths of time coming up later, which will be like, okay, how is that 5 years different than that 5 years? But this is the wonderful point in my life where 5 years, uh, there's such a giant leap from me being 15 to me being 20 that there needs to be a bridge. So this is the in-between point. Um, Probably we'll focus on 1986, maybe with a little bit of 1985. Um, I have a friend, W. Try not to use people's names in here because other than invading my own privacy, I don't want to invade theirs. W, who was he was sort of a friend at this point. He was sort of a friend and a friend of bullies and someone who kind of very much kind of flitted back and forth. Due to the upcoming events, I don't know whether we would have been how close of friends we would have been, but we became fairly close friends out of all this. Um, he was we have a ski hill, Snow White, up near us. He was driving his father. I think his father was driving with he and his friends. They got in a car accident, a really bad car accident, and his father died. He ended up in the hospital. His friend ended up in the hospital, like really smashed up. But and the main thing is, out of that, the father did not survive in that. Um, and I guess around this time, my father's alcoholism had gotten worse and worse. He had, just become more and more erratic, more and more drinking, gotten angrier and angrier at home. Things hadn't been really great for a good long time. My kid egocentric things. I don't know how long it had been bad, and then got steadily worse and worse. Um, Looking back on it, I think he had probably tried to kill himself a couple of times. You know, by car kind of stuff like that, and had survived. My mother, he ended up losing his job as an accountant um, at a local credit union, uh, and he and it was just life was really miserable. Life was really miserable, and this was all through the kind of the end of high school, and I was probably trying to avoid it as much as possible. Uh, I graduated. That happened, which strangely enough, my later years of high school were better than my the early years of high school, just because I think a lot of the bullies grew up as well, so there wasn't this focus on let's make Jay miserable, that there was at the beginning of it, and I had aged out that like younger bullies couldn't come after me because I was high school senior, so it was actually semi okay that way. Somewhere I went to Lake here, and I went to Lake Louise, and that was a good trip of just being with some of these people, more as a person. Still a geeky, unpleasant person to be around, I'm sure. But yeah, things got worse and worse at home. I think I graduated, and then that summer he just it really hit rock bottom, and life at home was horrible. We were just all kind of keeping separate from each other. Be fights. He was drunk. He was yelling at us. Um, and then finally, and it's like I kind of got to the point where it's like, gee, I just wish he would leave and never come back. And one day that happened. Uh, I was in bed, probably, and now looking back, I'm deeply, deeply depressed. My mother came into my room and said, like, "Oh, make sure my father doesn't leave," and I'm just like, "Oh, whatever." It's like I did not give a shit. I just wanted him to leave, and I was in bed, really depressed, and my father got up and he left the house, and he never came back. And from what I've heard, he took one of his guns and he went to the local hospital, went into a bathroom, and shot himself. Shot himself, I think, in the heart. I might be making that part up. Um, but yeah, so that, and you know, it was the it was the thing I had at that point in my really deep, deep, deep depression had been hoping for, and you know, it happened. It happened. He killed himself, and I have distinct memories of my mother in her grief screaming at me about it, and just her, obviously in her room, just crying and crying, obviously completely destroyed by this, um, and me just sort of sitting, me, my brother and sister just sort of sitting either together or apart in this, and um, my mother making the decision to, like, no one can, no, don't tell anyone that my father committed suicide. Don't tell anyone, uh, which, it's the shame of suicide, and it's one of those things of, I can see why my mother did it for herself, and to live in this, live in to live in Kelowna, but it was also just sort of the worst thing that could happen. I think they offered us some kind of counseling or stuff like that, but I didn't want counseling. I didn't want to talk to a stranger about this stuff. My mother certainly didn't want to talk about it at all. Um, and she had sort of told us not to tell anyone. So it's like, theoretically I couldn't tell, like, the few friends I had. Uh, and kind of due to that, I went through really hideous point of, like, I can't tell anyone. I can't tell anyone. For some reason, that really had a power over me. Um, but my friend W had his father had died, and of course they sort of knew what was going on. Of course, the thing that had happened at the same time is, around there, is that a grandfather, I think my mother's father, had died, um, around the same time. So there was kind of confusion of, like, who's died, like, outside of the family. Like, we were so kind of private and insular. It's like, well, who had died and what had happened? And the story that put out, it's like, oh, he died of a heart attack or something like that. And so, and but it took me, like, that probably, it took me a long, long time, what felt like forever, to finally tell my friend W. And that was probably because his father had died, and he was kind of going through he and his family were going through their own grief about that, uh, in at least what seemed like from outside, in a much more healthy way. They would sat around talking about their father. I mean, he had died in a way that was, a car accident. I don't know, better ways to die. It was less of a, he had killed himself. It was, he had died, and my friend had this image of him reaching across, embracing him, so almost maybe actually saving him. So that had been, um, so I told him, and there's a part of me that feels like that saved my life. That if I hadn't had that one friend to be able to talk to about it, to tell, to kind of release that, it probably would have consumed me right then and there. And indeed, I mean, the whole the thing of my father's suicide definitely. I mean, it stayed with me till today, but it's like it stayed with me in a very negative way that blocked a lot of my life past that point. And I mean, also just being an alcoholic family, and just how we dealt with emotions and how we dealt with how I dealt with stress because of that has followed me throughout my life, and really impinges on a lot of my story going forward for the next while. There's a lot of talks of counseling here, counseling there, trying this there that may come up if I feel like talking about it in later videos. But yeah, so that summer of graduating and my father committing suicide, and probably finally, I don't know how long it took me to finally tell W about that, and how kind of grateful I am that he was there, which is kind of sick in itself because in some ways, he was there and present for me as someone I thought I could talk to because his own father had just died. But it was a confluence of events. Yeah, yeah. So that's that big thing that happens between and me being and out of that comes a really deep estrangement from the rest of my family, from my mother. That idea of the secret, which really angered me for a long time, of not being able to tell and not really feeling that no one was interested in how I felt or who I was in the family. That it was all about just maintaining appearances, which is kind of probably just kind of a classic alcoholic family thing of keeping the secret and maintaining appearances, and probably mixed with a lot of English and Scottish ideas of how to present as a good middle class family, which I was not interested in, and I was very angry, and I was very mixed up, and I was very confused, and it was very smelly. And actually, I think maybe by this point I'd figured out deodorant. I don't know, somewhere late in my teenage years, way too late. I finally got to deodorant. I'm less smelly. We can maybe drop that theme. Um, so yes, but yeah. So I was, and to this day, I still am estranged from my family. I still don't feel. There's some part of me that feels like I can't trust them, which is stupid, especially when it comes to my brother and sister, and even like just to accepting my mother. But there's still a deep part of me that just doesn't want to be around them. And so I'm not. I'm not. I'm very much estranged from my family, and that's sort of who I am at the moment. From the times I do see them, I have seen them like 5 or 6 years ago. Seem like nice people, but not people that I feel like I've got a connection to anymore. There's been a super break. I mean, I'm now a 50-year-old guy, and I left home a couple of summers after my father committed suicide, and that was probably about it. There's a couple of visits back, but that was about it, and that's about it for Kelowna. Um, had a really deep emotional connection to W. As a friend, really deep. Um, but even that didn't sort of survive the jump. And I mean, a part of that is just like pre-internet. I moved. He went on with his life. I went on with my life. I don't feel I don't have the kind of the issues with him that I do with like my family. It's like he was there. He helped me at a time when I really needed help. Hopefully I was someone that he could talk to and was maybe hopefully positive in his life. I, you know, I don't know. Um, and I wish him well wherever he is. But that was pre-internet times, and that was about it. Yeah, yeah. So at this point, I guess sort of say goodbye to my family in at least physical terms. They're always still in the head there. Goodbye to the friends that I had there, because at a certain point, somebody I'd met in the local college, which I wasn't doing very well in, because I'd gone into like an engineering program, which is what my father had decided, engineering computer thing that my father decided I was in. I lasted for like half a semester in that and completely failed all the science stuff because, of course, I was not interested in that, and ended up kind of enrolling in kind of very kind of light English stuff and hanging out with people, a bunch of people at the the kind of the smoking area. But I got to sit around and just talk and socialize with people, which is probably what I needed at that point. And one of the people I met there was very, very talkative and very kind of a little bit manic, which I should have probably realized. Was moving to Victoria and was moving into a large house. And hey, would I be interested in moving down with him? And kind of oddly for me, because I'm a person who, especially going forward, there's a theme of being stuck, of not doing anything, went, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I'm going to move. And that was it. I mean, a part of that is my home life with my mother had gotten worse and worse. After my father had died, I was super angry. She was probably dealing with grief. We were not getting along. I was probably an incredible handful. And I went, oh, okay, I'm leaving. I'm going to move to Victoria. And so I moved to Victoria. And that's where we'll pick up the story next time in 20. But I figured I better do this in between part. And I'm glad I just sort of got it out of the way, because if I have thought about just not talking of like, oh, do I need to do it? Should I do it today? Maybe I should wait and try and gird myself. It's like, no. Just sit down and start talking about it and get it out of the way, because it's a painful explosion. It's the big rupture of my life. There's before, there's Kelowna, and then there's after Kelowna in my life, of the ruptures, and that's one of them. So yes, I piled into a rusty yellow old Toyota with holes in the floor. Half of it, I think, was a Mazda. No, that's probably maybe it was the microbud. No, I think it was still the Toyota at that point. And we moved down to Victoria. And moved down to Victoria with this guy and a bunch of people. One of the people who I moved down in with will come up a lot in later videos. But we'll get to there at year 20. We'll talk about that at year 20. All right. Yeah. Yeah. So to lost family and to found family. Yeah, both of them. I loved you both, and I probably still do love you, regardless of whether you're lost or not. All sorts of family. All right, more videos later.